Hi. A little more than 3.5 years ago, we started off on an adventure around here to learn how to re-whiten faceplates on NuTone Intercom master stations and speakers. A little over 3 years ago, I decided to build my very first UV light box, which is what you're looking at here. Although it's not really in the same condition it was when I built it 3.5 years ago. Let's take a quick look at what's happened to it and what the future holds for our little UV light box version 1.0. As you can see, it's in pretty rough shape at the moment. The exposure to all of the chemicals and the UV light has taken its toll on the wood. When I built this, since it was kind of an experiment at that time, I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to end up. I just built it out of some moderately priced plywood that I bought at the Home Improvement Center. Built it all, wired it up, and put the UV lamps in it. For the first 3 years or so, it was just great, but slowly over time, it began to very slowly but very steadily fall apart. Let's take a look at what happened. This is the light holding assembly, and this is the adjustable panel that came out through the top. And as you can see, the plywood's starting to delaminate and warping. That's from primarily the chemicals and the moisture that is around this when the chemicals are in the whitening tank. And then if we turn it this way, we've got the remains of the fluorescent lamp sockets. These were all brand new when they were put together, and you can see that they've just gone to pieces here. This whole section is missing, and all of the contacts inside are corroded. Here's one of the contacts here that fell out. These are just as brittle can be, and it's might be a little hard to see, but the surface of the plywood, it's got these grooves in it for the grain of the plywood, and it's all shrunken away. And actually, when you rub your fingers on it, you can feel the chemical residue that's all in the wood, because this is all exposed. It's covering up the area where the chemicals are. And as you can see on this top piece, you can just do this and it just falls apart. There's just no life left in the plywood at all. Towards the end of this light box's life, there was a lot, when you would turn the fluorescent lights on, you could hear them sizzle because the connections on the ends of the fluorescent tubes weren't making a good connection on the contacts in the sockets anymore, and you get that kind of sizzling fluorescent light kind of sound that happens. And here is the lid, and the outside of the lid actually look pretty good. Don't pay attention to this part too much because I did this. This is where the wires from the ballast went down into the bottom of the cover, but this all just fell apart without any effort at all. And on the inside, you can see the plywood's all delaminating. Again, it's from the chemicals and the moisture. Since the UV light is shining down from this area, this is not that exposed to it, although there is some photon bouncing that goes on, so it does happen. But this area down here, there was a little hole here, and another hole here and here that the wires went through. When I built the light box originally, on the end of the wires, I put 2-pin Molex connectors so you could unplug the ballast from the lamp assembly to make it easier to take the whole thing apart. Without thinking about it, the holes weren't really big enough for the connectors to fit through, and I didn't want to take the connectors apart, so I just thought, well, I'll just cut out part of the top of the cover and get the wires out that way. And I didn't even need to use a saw or anything. I just used a really big pair of tin snips that I had, and the wood just crumbled and fell apart. As you can see, there's just no life left in it whatsoever. So that's not good. And the other thing that happened here is this is the slot that the adjustable part could slide up and down in to raise and lower the height of the lamps, and this had all warped, so the slot wasn't big enough anymore, and the fin that fit through it, you couldn't slide it anymore. It was just kind of stuck where it was because all the plywood was so warped. The worst part of the damage is the box itself, particularly this, what would be, I guess, the left-hand end of it. And you can see the plywood's all delaminating in here. The plywood, when it was new, was a 1/2 inch thick, and enough layers have peeled off this end where one, it's just flopping around. It's not even held together anymore. At the very end, the last time a few times I used this, the cracks in it were large enough that you could see the light come through the cracks. And as you can see, it's just falling apart here. This is only, I think this is only, it's like 1 layer thick, and the veneer on the outside, which is coming off, it's just, there's nothing left of this. It's just totally shot. This is primarily from exposure to the chemicals. There's a lot of chemical buildup here, especially in the bottom half of the box all the way around. It's not too bad on the bottom, because when we use this, we put a plastic tray that fits into the bottom of it, and we put rags underneath the tray to catch any liquid that might spill. So actually the bottom is not too bad, except in the corner down here where it's all mealy and eaten away. And so this is the end result of about 3 years of being exposed to whitening chemicals and the high intensity UV light in the light box. So as you can see, this one's done. It's toast. It's going in the dumpster right after I get done making this video. The question was, what are we going to do? Because we need a light box, and I want something that lasts longer than 3 years. So, as always, I had an idea. What was my big idea? My big idea was this. This is UV Lightbox version 2.0. And you might notice that it looks virtually identical to the first one, because for the most part, it really is. It turned out to be a really good design. It worked really well for what we needed to use it for. And I didn't see any reason to really change all of the design, because the first one worked out just fine. I made some minor changes in the way it was constructed, and mostly what it was constructed from. This is, instead of being made out of wood, because I wanted something that would hold up and last better, this is made out of plastic. It's made out of this. This is a high density polyethylene plastic, and it's used a lot in outdoor marine and boat applications, and it's virtually impervious to everything in the world. It has a lot of chemical resistance. It has a lot of UV light resistance. It's very dense. It's very heavy. It came in, I bought 1 full sheet of it, which was 54 inches by 96 inches. And it took 2 of us to load it in the van because it was so heavy. And also, it's very slippery, and it was really hard to hold on to. So it took 2 of us to wrestle it into the van. After doing research, this turned out to be what seemed like a really good choice to build something like this out of. It was readily available, which was nice, and also because of how it's made, it's very much like working with wood. You can use common woodworking tools on it. You can cut it, route it, shape it, drill holes, put screws in it, which hold really well, and all of that. The only downside to it is it doesn't really glue very well. There's only one type of special 2-part epoxy that was recommended to be used on it. Even that was kind of hard to find. The supplier of the plastic didn't actually have the epoxy, and I had to order it. And when I went to order it, I had to verify on the order that I was a professional. I wasn't some homeowner, I guess, trying to buy it, because they were worried that I was going to hurt myself with it or something. So I don't know about that. This seemed like a good choice, and I'm pretty sure that this will last nearly forever. So as you can see, it's virtually the same. Let me show you what's on the inside. Well, let me show you what's on top first. All I did on top was I transferred over all the working components that we had on the original one. We have the 2 ballast assemblies here because we have 2 banks of lights, 3 tubes on this side, 3 tubes on this side. We have our on-off switch here with our really long red cord. And we have our adjustable fin, which now slides up and down. There's 9 holes in the adjustable fin, so we can raise and lower the light assembly quite a bit. The only thing I need to get for it is, just to finish it off, you know, to make it nice, is I need some round dowels that fit through the holes nicer. Than this will work fine, but you know, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. This is the same. The only real change I made to the to the top was I added this piece here, this little trim detail piece, which I only did to help close up the gap, mostly on the ends of where the fin fits through, so the light doesn't leak out so much. It's probably not really that important, but it's just something that occurred to me. And you know, when you've got all the tools out and you've already made a big mess, you might as well go all out and do the whole thing. So let's go ahead and lift the cover off and I'll show you what's inside. And here, so here's the box assembly. It's the same design, same shape, same size as the original. It is sitting on 4 little feet. So it sits in the roll-around cart flatter and doesn't rock around, just in case it was somewhat uneven, which it probably wouldn't have been, but that's just the way I made it. And then if we tip it up and you see inside, it's white inside. This is the color the plastic came, and I just simply painted the outside because I didn't really like the white in the shop. I know everyone thought that was silly, but you know, aesthetics count, and you know, I didn't like the white on the roll-around cart. The shop has sort of a theme in its colors. I know all that seems weird, but that's the way I do it. The white inside will work really well because it will be much more reflective of the UV light than the wood was originally. When I built the first one, it was just sort of your standard light plywoody kind of color inside, and I did seal it with some clear water-based sealer. I forget, it was some kind of one of those water-based acrylic things that they sell at the hardware stores nowadays, and to make it waterproof, it didn't really change the color. Maybe it made it more or less reflective, I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure the white will be a lot more reflective, and all of those UV photons, they're going to be chasing around all over the place in this. So I think this will probably work out better than what the original one was. So here's the inside of the cover. This is the light assembly. I'm not going to take it all the way out because there's really no reason to. And it's the same basic design as the original one. There's the tray with the sockets and the lamps, and then some edge pieces here. The edge pieces are just primarily to help protect the tubes when you lift it out and set it aside to add the chemicals and the things you have to do. All the light sockets are new. All of the wiring is new. The wiring had suffered quite a bit. There were a lot of cracks in the insulation and all of that, so everything was rewired. And again, it's all left its original white color inside the lid and the reflectant box. So again, it should be much more reflective, and that'll probably change how effective the whole thing is. We'll have to try it the first time and see. One of the byproducts of the plastic material instead of the wood is everything is a lot heavier nowadays. I would say altogether this assembly weighs probably a little more than 2 times what the original one did, since it's not the lamps and everything, and the ballasts don't weigh any more than it did before. It's all in the plastic because the plastic is so incredibly dense that it just weighs a ton. So one of the things I have to find and add to this is we're going to need some kind of sturdy handles on the outside of the ends of the box of the cover, because we don't want to slip and drop this, and that's how tubes get broken, and the tubes are expensive, so we don't want to do that. It's all wired up with just a standard on-off light switch, and we can turn it on. Oh look, we can get a suntan while we stand here and talk. I have to talk to the supplier where I got them from to find out how long they actually last, because we do know how many hours we've used this. I don't know if they weaken with age. They probably do to some degree, although they still seem to work really well. So far, the count on this is we have done just a few over 200 master stations, and we have done just a little over 300 remote speakers altogether. So the whitening is something that's reasonably popular. It comes in really handy to improve on people's equipment and improve on equipment that we sell. Most recently, I did the video about undiscoloring the IS-45 inside remote station, which I think turned out really well. So this is a very worthwhile thing to do. And I forgot to point out, when I built this and assembled all the pieces, everything has lap joints on the corners to make them sturdier and less light leakage, although I don't think there'll be much in the way of light leakage. All of the joints have epoxy, but I also put screws in all the joints to help hold it together. There was some question about how effective the epoxy would be over time. The epoxy gets brittle as it dries, and the plastic is more flexible in quotes, than the epoxy would be, so it could have a tendency to crack. The use for the epoxy was more for gluing large flat panels to a stable surface and not so much joints like this. So, you know, screws and glues, belt and suspenders could never hurt. So there you have it. This is UV Lightbox version 2.0. And I think 2.0 will probably be the last version because I anticipate that this will probably last forever. I don't see any reason why I would ever need to build another one, which is fine because it was actually a lot of work. I hope you found this interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up on YouTube because that always helps. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or on the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.